What is up, Gorilla Nation, and welcome your asses back to a brand new edition and a brand new episode of the Division 2 build guide. In today's video, we'll be going over the Agent Reaper build. I must say this is one of the, and if not the most nastiest LMG build and the strongest that I have made to date on this game. So, before I hop into the specifics, be sure to ground and pound that like button and smash that sub button if you happen to be new to the channel, and then reach up there, trigger the bell, and turn on post notifications so that way you know each and every time a video is uploaded or I go live. Well, without further ado, I'm going to send you over to some gameplay. I'm not going to hold you too long. It's going to be a few short clips, and then we'll hop into the build specifics itself, and then I'll include some additional gameplay at the end of the build video. But we'll see you guys and gals back here in just a moment.
We're not even.
Like I said, it was just a few short clips. I don't want to hold you too long and extend this video out too much, so we'll hop right into the build. And don't forget, there'll be additional gameplay at the end if you so choose to want to check that out. But let's hop into it. Now first, I am utilizing one of my favorites, not the favorite, but one of my favorites, the RPK. And let me tell you, the reason why I like the RPK is just simply it's a hybrid between an AR and an LMG, because one of the main down factors or downsides of an LMG is the reload speed. Now, of course, I like the Pestilence for the mid to long range, so that way as they're pushing up on me, I'm able to inflict some damage, and then they have that Plague of the Outcast tick upon them as well. Now, speaking of that load times, if you do not prefer the likes of the RPK, which is a pretty much an LMG hybrid, then I would suggest check out the Good Times. Now, the Good Times, yes, a lot slower rate of fire, but you're going to be doing more damage. But the great and awesome thing about the Good Times is check out that reload time. It will drastically reduce the reload time of your LMG because it has perfect fast hands. Now you can actually find fast hands and put it on any LMG you so choose desire, like the MK46 or the M249, or you can even go with it and try to find it on an MG5, which is currently I'm still trying to find, or even the Negev. It just all depends on your personal preference, but it varies between, looks like I used a little bit of the Good Times when I was in the raid with the Frog, the God. Shout out to him. Also, shout out to Clever Thumbs. Be sure to go check out their content. Really good and funny guys. But anyways, I used this. I used the RPK. I predominantly used a Pestilence. But the sky's the limit. It's just whatever you so choose and whatever you feel most comfortable with. Now, I went with the Gunner here because, as you can see, only 1.1 million armor. Now, if you don't know about the Gunner, when you pop an armor kit, it's going to give you a proc of bonus armor on top of your normal armor. So it does help you in certain situations, to where if you're able to sneak back and pop back into cover when you're getting shot at and then they push upon you, then you do get that bonus armor right before you engage them. But also, let's say if you don't want to go that route and you prefer the likes of the Demolitionist, the good thing about the Demolitionist with Unbreakable, once they pop your Unbreakable, let's say they push up on you. They are hosing you down with whatever weapon they're using. Of course, you know, they gotta have their shield because that's typically what everybody runs these days. Boring, I know. Anyways, they crack your armor, and since, for instance, the RPK only has 65 rounds, typical around an AR size or even an SMG, once your armor is cracked, it instantly refills your magazine, so that way you can keep on spraying and don't have that downtime of reloading, so that way you can dish out more DPS and more damage. So it just depends on which way you want to go through. Now, I had a mock-up of this in a previous video, how to maximize the damage potential of your video, but I just kind of threw pieces on there to kind of give you an idea. But let's hop into it. and give you the specifics on this destruction shredding agent Reaper. Now, we go against my typical advice just because I know everybody uses it, but of course the contractor's gloves. And this particular pair here, for the next 4 hours before she resets, hopefully this video will be up before then, or at Mendoza's, the black market vendor, has max weapon damage, has the max damage to armor, and then I just re-rolled the crit chance was on it because I think it only had like 8 or 9% critical hit damage, so it is an awesome pair of gloves. So if you're able to, definitely go pick them up. But I get 10% LMG damage, but the main thing is that 8% damage to armor. And of course, Fox's knee prayer, I had to roll the armor, so that way I can be a little bit more tanky and not be all glass cannon. And then we have the ever so important 8% damage to targets out of cover. And then I have to go with crit chance. The other two pieces, of course, is the Walker Harris. One piece gives you weapon damage. The second piece gives you an additional 5% damage to armor. And then I went with armor, crit chance, crit damage, and of course crit damage in the mod slot. Now the chest piece, weapon damage, crit chance, and of course the critical hit damage in the mod slot with Unbreakable. Once your armor pops, then it also gives you back a little bit of your armor once your armor is cracked. Now, as you can see, I'm still min-maxing my pieces, so these pieces that you probably will have, better stats on them, and your numbers will reflect that. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Now, I went with one-piece Grupo for the 15% critical hit damage, and of course, critical hit damage, critical hit chance, weapon damage, and then critical hit damage in the mod slot, and then of course, Companion, because I don't, plan on being up close and personal too much. But it'll be somewhat mid-range to far out, but not too much. I'm gonna try to minimize the distance, so that way I don't get rushed upon. I know it's hard sometimes, but I'm gonna try to play the mid-game range, of course, with this build. So I went with Companion over Vigilance because with Companion, either I have the deflector drone, which is I'm currently utilizing on this build to help my survivability, but also that also procs Companion. And then of course I had the decoy, so no matter, I can alternate either or, so that I always have consistently that 15% weapon damage and don't have to worry about getting hit with damage like Vigilance, and then it takes it off for 3 seconds. So regardless whether I'm around my teammates or either of my skills, I'm going to consistently 99.9% of the time always have that 15% weapon damage. Now I had to go with one piece of Seska because LMGs, ARs, any archetype weapon other than SMGs do not necessarily have the built-in crit chance like SMGs. Tier attributes like the baked-in 15% critical hit chance on that one, but you can get critical hit chance on the attribute slots, and that would open up the door for the likes of, let's say, to go with the Cody's Mask if you want to go that route. As you can see, like on the MG5 I typically use, I have an additional 9% damage to targets out of cover and also 6% damage to armor, and that damage to armor is more critical and more viable, and it'll be more beneficial to me than, let's say, 6% critical hit chance that I could typically get in that slot. So that is why I chose to go with the Seska here, because that one piece gives me that 10% critical hit chance. And of course, weapon damage, critical hit damage, and then critical hit chance. Now the stats are as follow: 56.2% critical hit chance, 129.1 critical hit damage, and of course that 19% damage to armor, and then that 17% damage to targets out of cover. Now one could make the argument, well, what about all these other pieces I see with people using the improvised pieces for that additional critical hit damage mod slot? Okay, let's just for instance here, let's say I went with the improvised holster here, just so I would get that additional crit hit damage mod slot, or that critical hit chance mod slot, that I would still be losing out on 4% critical hit chance. Or if my Grupo was in this spot, which is a good example, and I'm only using that one piece Grupo, because typically you're only going to use an improvised piece in this holster section, because if you're using the contractor gloves and the Fox's knee prayer, which is that damage to targets out of cover and damage to armor that are on these, are far superior than 12% critical hit damage. because this damage is multiplicative. So why would you choose just 12% critical hit damage on each piece for a total of 24% critical hit damage when you can get 8% damage to armor and then 9% damage to targets out of cover, which is a far more damage than that 24% critical hit damage. So you wouldn't put an improvised piece here. And since chest piece, mask, and backpacks all have mod slots anyways, then if you put them in these slots, you would be missing out on the brand set bonuses. So the likely only other option is the holster. So if Grupo was here, then yes, I would gain 12% critical hit damage in a mod slot, but I would be actually losing 3% critical hit damage, because if I had a Grupo here, then yes, I wouldn't have that mod slot, but see, I get 15% critical hit damage just for the brand set bonus versus a 12% critical hit damage mod slot. So if you want to go knee pads and you just say you want to, rebel against the world, typically like I do as far as the whole meta thing, because I actually enjoy the competition and really not using the contractor's gloves and Fox's knee prayers on every single build, because that's really no build diversity. Then in that case, you could take these off, such as these here, or just the knee pads or the gloves, and put in those improvised pieces to get that additional 12% critical hit damage mod slots. So it just depends on what your preferences are, whether you don't mind using, the cookie cutter pieces and the non-lack thereof build diversity, and going with the contractor's gloves and of course the Fox's Prayer knee pads. But definitely check this build out. It is fun, awesome. You will rip through tons and tons of enemies, whether it be in PvE or PvP. It is a lot of fun. And plus, you must probably be thinking, well, 1.1 million armor, you're just going to get shredded. Well, that's why I have a deflector drone and a falling back on Unbreakable. But if you want just a little bit more survivability and you're constantly getting rushed upon, then you can sacrifice your backpack talent like I have here instead of companion, and just go with the likes of Adrenaline Rush. So that way you get bonus procs or armor to further your survivability. Or you may have better pieces in these 3 slots, but I currently do not have a piece that has critical hit damage, critical hit chance, and armor on them, so I am basically forced to have reds as my core attributes. But if you have better pieces and just have them laying around in your stash and want to uptick your armor because you prefer, say, 1.3 or 1.5 million armor, then just change out your Legos as you see fit. 3 blue, 3 red, or 4 blue, 2 red. Sky's the limit. It's all up to your personal preference. This is my personal preference, but make this build your own. Try it out and go out there and make LMGs great again, no matter if it's PvE or PvP content. But thank you guys so much for tuning in. Appreciate all the love and support, and we'll see you guys fudging later. That in his chest. Get his chest. I got you.